Peace and respect to you all. And I only went live, apparently, to apologize to bigzebra.com, a great comedy channel and a fine person, and MacAHuman. Because apparently my brain did not account for time zones in my memory. And I scheduled the show to start in my time zone when it should have started in their time zone, 12 o'clock noon, which would be 10 o'clock where I am. So I received emails saying something like, oh, hey, sorry, guys. My brain is not always dependable in every way. Peace and respect to Commander 401. Feel free to come in and do a different thing than I planned. And we would talk to you instead if you'd think you'd enjoy that. And there is someone besides Commander 401 who is viewing the stream. Peace and respect to you, whatever brother or sister you may be of mine. So, accounting for delay and such like that, I'll give that a minute and see what happens before I just kill this. Okay, so it seems like a good opportunity to go over what I do here for anyone who might not be familiar. At age 42, as an anti-theist, not wanting these things to be true, was given evidence that I just cannot, peace and respect, Commander 401, that I just can't deny as being true in reality. And because of that, peace and respect, George, have to look at these things seriously and say, okay, if there's evidence for a thing, and the thing, the evidence is apparently existent, how can I deny that this thing exists? So I became no longer an anti-theist. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's actually quite a sizable delay between my phone and being in here. Can you restate what you were saying?
I said at age 42, as an anti-theist, I saw evidence I couldn't deny without just being unrealistic. And the more I investigate and try to disprove this, the more it stands on its own. And, regardless of what I might think.
I mean, that you feel that there is a God, the kind of like not exactly what traditional Christian or Jewish teaching says, but along those lines.
That was very forgiving of you. Thank you. And thank you for recognizing that my position is not, quote unquote, average. No, not even along those lines. In fact, I think that what their own stories are describing, they have no concept of. And they've accepted traditions of magical thinking that are eliminated by the not only not suggested, but also directly counterpointed that you can't have magical thinking reading the Bible.
Well, you know how like the story of Noah's Ark goes, right? Some
Sure,
guy, 1,000-year long, a 1 in 1,000-year flood. It's got a few chickens, some goats, etc. He gets washed out to sea from the Tigris and the Euphrates. He meets dry land. His survival story becomes epic, and then it winds up being embellished in the epics of Gilgamesh, and then later Avram from Ur of the Chaldeans picks up on that story. It's passed down. Or like with the Exodus, you have
well, one thing at a time, please.
Well, I was giving an example of how the plagues have a naturalistic explanation. You had a volcano went off, I think it was Santorini or something like that, around Ramses the Great's time. You have the red tide. You have everything crawling out of the water. You have the death that comes from that. Um, and all the bugs, the fleas, blah, 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 the boils. And then then you have the darkness from the cloud of ash blowing over. And then as far as the darkness brings the growing of the mycotoxin on the top layer of the food, which the firstborn gets first dibs. So the firstborn eats said mycotoxin, dies, a few hundred people get kicked out of Egypt and wander around, and then in a few thousand years, it's some epic tale, or a few hundred
Okay.
years, actually.
Okay. All that is reasonable. Okay. And those are good explanations for the stories. I'm not saying they aren't. I'm saying that's exactly backward. Those things do happen in reality. Those actual occurrences are being used to explain something that has not yet happened.
What particularly has not happened?
For instance, which I could take any part of anything you said, but it just throws in my mind right now plagues and locust. Okay. Have there been actual locusts on this earth? Obviously. Have there been huge amounts of them in certain places at certain times that just ate the heck out of crops? Absolutely. Is that what it's actually talking about when it talks about the plagues of locust on Egypt? Absolutely not. It's actually using that real occurrence thing to talk about something that they're going to do to the planet in these mechanical false machine locusts. They're not naturally occurring locusts.
Are you talking about Revelations where the
Yes.
things have the bodies of locusts and
Yes. And across the board, all of it. Have those been real things that happened? Yes. Is it talking about those past events? Absolutely not.
Revelations is rather symbolic. Draws heavily from Zechariah and
From what?
the book of Zechariah
Oh, okay.
and Daniel. Remember when I was reading Isaiah 40?
Yeah.
The nations are like grasshoppers. And what is a locust? It's just a grasshopper that has been.
That particular line would be in reference to the city of Ai, where are the Nephilim, and it's an exaggeration of physical size. Not that we are literally as small as grasshoppers compared to them, and we are certainly not the locust. Peace and respect, also Mac.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
So you're putting things together there just because the commonality of a naturally occurring animal, but a locust is not a grasshopper. That's not true.
Well, you have grasshoppers, and then something happens which causes them to mature in a completely different direction.
No, you have teenage locusts, and when they get crowded enough and bumped into each other enough, they go to maturity and grow wings so they can get away from each other. That doesn't make it a grasshopper. And grasshoppers do not become locusts.
I might have gotten that confused.
So when they bump into each other enough, they start releasing pheromones, and those pheromones trigger the rest of their growing into adulthood, and they become fully formed. Whereas a grasshopper, it grows to adulthood in an uninterrupted cycle, and start reproducing, even if they're way overcrowded.
I'm trying to remember the exact words in Revelation. I have not picked up the New Testament in a really long time. I believe they had the heads of a man, the hair of a woman, breastplates, and the body of locusts. And they had in the power of their tails the ability to inflict pain upon people.
Yeah, like a scorpion. The sting of a scorpion, yeah. But the scorpion sting hurts for 5 months. And as they're traveling in flight, they make the sound of metal clashing against itself. That is, they sound mechanical and metallic. And it's compared to, but there's a whole bunch of them. It's kind of like Rolling Thunder, the motorcycle event. None of the motorcycles are that loud, but you put that damn many together, and it sounds like distant thunder. The flying locust, the proper word locust, the way that it's being used there, and the way it's referred to earlier as well, not talking about an animal. Animals, no matter how many you get together, are not going to sound like clinking metal. That's just not going to. It's a totally different thing. And what they're saying is that it sounds like horses clad in armor running into battle, because the things are metal, which is why they're so unnatural looking in their description. They got the body of a scorpion, but they fly like a locust, which scorpion don't normally do. But they have the mouth of a lion, the face of a man, and the hair of a woman. Oh, and a crown, and they're wearing crowns, which I personally think is a small prying device, a levering device, so that they can get past, I don't know, your screen door in your front door, your screen, so they can get through the screen.
I've only thought about those texts in terms of symbolic for something else, but not literal.
Yeah, they are. Well, that doesn't mean the thing isn't future literal.
Like take and again, take India or China. You can't raise really in the West an army of 200 million. You can do that in India. You can do that in China. Mechanized warfare of some kind, but also the breastplates of iron, or they had breastplates, right? Because I'm trying to do this from memory, and I haven't picked up a New Testament.
You're doing okay. I filled in the details you missed. Yeah, you're keep going.
Often like breastplates were symbolization of some codification of law or behavior. When I believed in Christianity, in Christianity, there's justification by one's faith, and then there's look at me, all of my works. And oftentimes, whether it be in Judaism or in other religions, there's decorations, like we have the plates for over the Torah. I'm trying to remember. We have that. No, wait, that's just like they got that from, ironically, Masons sold it to them. It had all the gemstones or whatever, and on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we put the ephod over the Torah, but I thought it might have been representative of a codification of law, and obviously the hair of a woman would be nations or religions in the ancient world were always identified as female.
Sure.
So
would probably, like in some languages, chariot, it would have a feminine gender. Sure.
Right. Musical instruments also.
Right.
I I always, if that stuff does come to pass, I honestly do not think that, and I'm going to say this, I honestly do not think, but I honestly do not know how much of the Tanakh will come to pass, or how much what in Revelations will come to pass.
That's
Maimonides
always fair.
said that the Christian texts were meant to wean the nations off of the gods and bring them closer to monotheism, as
It
opposed
failed.
to, I know, because Christianity is by its nature polytheist.
Yes.
But you get the idea.
Of course, they claim to be monotheistic, but they're not. Okay. All right. So here's the issue that I have with that. I'm not saying these things definitely will happen in the future, but I think if there were beings able to interact with physicality, then they have physicality. Okay, that seems to follow. And if they can arrive here en masse in so many numbers that as they individually descend from their transportation, their white robes can cover a black mountain range and turn the mountains white. There'll be so many of them. Then certainly that is some kind of you could colloquially call it an alien invasion. If there's an alien invasion, that means they just came from so far away that we could not see them before they came this way, which means they're galactic travelers. And if you could just travel from here to the next nearest star system, then certainly you could make a locust by that description.
One of the things regarding this that I'm a little bit uneasy with is, like, tell me about the metals before I say anything. The seven metals.
The
you were
metals
talking.
of what?
Do you remember the seven metals that you were talking about last time?
Yes, the seven mountain-sized lumps of metals to be recovered from this planet, and they were these. I may have a little trouble. I'm not great at this. Gold, silver, mercury, lead, iron, tin, and copper. Oh, I got them.
Why would they necessarily need to do that with Earth when they have the asteroid belt? With all of
They're
those
not
things
concerned about something so small and difficult as the asteroid belt right now. They've already spent millennia collecting enough materials from things like asteroid belts that they can terraform a planet. Now they're just going to keep reusing them. Why bother to collect them all again?
So what are they going to do with this place? Destroy it and
Well, this becomes like Mars is now, pretty much, after a couple thousand years of cooling off.
what is the entire premise of your interpretation? And I do actually want to be very kind to you because you're a great guy.
I don't. Oh, you're a sweetheart too, and I think you're brilliant, by the way. And that was very forgiving, but it didn't have enough definition that I think I could answer it.
Exactly a consistent framework of how you're reading the Bible.
Okay, I can do that in 2 words: multiple earths. And everything else is repercussions of multiple earths. And it seems to fully exhaust, and as an explanation, all of the apparent problems that Christians have because they won't accept that the stories are describing multiple earths.
I wouldn't doubt that there are multiple planets suitable for life.
We know that, yeah.
I wouldn't even discount that there are beings that, you know, with enough dedication and resources, possibly travel the stars. outside of that which would be like magical, how would you suggest that, say, the prophets predicted these things? And when I say magic, obviously I've had situations where, like I shared that, and also there was another actually quite nightmarish social commentary on the way society and the churches have gone that I had around the same time. Basically, you had a bunch of people who were not hurting anybody. And remember, when I had this, I still believed in Christianity. A bunch of people who weren't hurting anybody, but they were dead like zombies, like the Christians say you need to be spiritually alive, blah, blah, blah. And then they started caring about the things of God, whatever. And then those who looked alive basically went all Resident Evil. And what struck me about this particular dream, it was the only dream where I actually was killed and never immediately woke up. And that's why it stuck with me from 2000, late 2012. But I do know what that was involving in terms of my subconscious. Just
too many movies?
No. I noticed that the churches actually had no interest in inviting anyone new. They had the idea that you were going to have Abraham Lincoln as the father of your party and be white in order to be a Christian. They would basically, they were using church as a political cudgel rather than any real what it was supposed to be. And they were basically, they realized that they could not get the millennials and Gen Z to adopt their gospel of what eventually became Donald Trump. So now
but I'm still missing your overall point, and I'm getting lost here.
So, I'm lost. I'm just saying that sometimes, we have people either because they see things, or like with the prophets of the Tanakh, they make predictions that do not come by what mechanism other than spiritual or just observing.
Okay, I remember the question again. The actual question you based all that on. Okay, you said, how do I explain the prophets? Super easy, actually. And I laughed at 42 years of age the first time I actually opened up the book and read it for myself. Because the overall statement of the prophet is the opening line of the book. This is the book, the prophet, whomever. It literally reads that the book is the prophet. It's not a person. So when Christians say something like this is a historical character who wrote this down, no, it's not. It's someone in heaven after the fact writing their account of what happened during end times using animism, local things that the people that it's going to be delivered to already know about. And I'll give you for instance. There's no Jewish people in the ancient Near East who would have thought that at any point they had killed all the Amalekites. Why not? They were neighbors. They would not believe that they killed the Amalekites because they lived side by side the whole time. And by the way, there was no record of any warring between the two tribes. So they would not take it literally like the Christians do, thinking that, so when someone says, okay, well, justify why the Amalekites were murdered by the Jew would laugh if you asked them that. They know it didn't happen. And it's only our separation from being on a different landmass that makes us think that did happen. It was never intended to be read that way. Peace and respect, Uncle Beck.
Well, they they weren't exactly wiped out. What happened is you had some wars and some fighting. The Book of Esther, by the way, which they've never found the records or whatever, but they were around even after, if you believe that book. Haman was actually a descendant of Agagatha, king of the Amalekites. So yeah, they were never actually all wiped out. Um, no, but I mean, like, if you take all the genealogies from Abraham all the way to Adam, right?
Hmm.
It's 1948 years,
Maybe,
and then
maybe
there's
not. Depends on what you call a generation.
well, they give the number of years, even though realistically, when you take all those long lives or whatever, and then you break them down into months, you get reasonable time spans of human.
Those numbers aren't meant to be literally taken as years. And in Hebrew numerology, which is how the Hebrew people would have actually read it, those numbers, like you'll never see someone live to be something, and there's no 6 in any of their ages ever. That's because 6 is falling short of the goal, and it's incompleteness and it's imperfection. But you'll always see a 1 because 1 refers to God. And you'll either see a 2 or a 3 because 2 is talking about unity. And then 3 is talking about confederacy, where there's like a group of you that agree. And it's a description of the story. It's not an age of a person.
What I was just going to bring up is that, numerology aside, if you do take and add all those years up from Abraham being born all the way back to Adam, it's 1948. And ironically, that's the year in the secular calendar Israel became a nation again. You did have, this is what I'm talking about, predictions. A lot of the things in the Tanakh can be ascribed to other events that happened that either didn't come to pass or have other explanations. Like some people say, a child is born, a son is given, and his name shall be called Emmanuel, God with us. And they actually just ascribe that to one of the kings of Israel being foretold that he would be born, and some wishful thinking back during turbulent times. It might have been Hezekiah, they thought that was talking about. And then the Christians attribute that to Jesus. But the 70 years of exile, Zechariah saying, who have you fasted for these 70 years? Was it for me or for you? And then after talking about the first 70 years, and maybe it's just the pareidolia brain, but the temple was sacked in 70 AD. I mean, things like that, where you have 70 years of exile, 70 years happen. You have possible 70 years from the birth of you know who, or at least the common era, if you want to ignore Jesus, but acknowledge that at that particular time, even though it was like 4 years off, because let's face it, there are problems with the dates as far as the census goes.
Yeah, there are problems. But I want to give Mac some space. He's been quite patient.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. This is fascinating. Can I ask a clarifying question on where you're coming from and what I can address you as?
It's Commander.
Oh, hey, how's it going, Commander? So, are you saying that there's evidence of, I guess, what would be called synchronicities in the Old Testament that aren't exactly explicit prophecies, like predictions, but more like patterns that become important later in the story. Is that sort of what the picture you're painting here?
Well, again, I have a mixed religious history. Born Jewish, became a Christian, almost became a preacher, then said fuck it and went back to the synagogue. So I'm probably applying some Christian reading to Jewish texts and making a hodgepodge of everything. But I'm saying that there are some things like where it says, "To us is born, a son is given, and his name shall be called Emmanuel, the government." They were most likely, I think, though I'm not sure, the prophet Isaiah was referring to like some king that was recently born,
Sure,
rather than Jesus.
I mean,
But
people have thought that would refer to several individuals throughout history. I mean,
but
and they
it
can't all
doesn't
be
mean that.
correct.
But it doesn't mean that. As far as where, like Richard has a very unique interpretation where basically aliens are in fact God or gods, if I'm correct, or they take the place. Okay. And I have an interpretation which is closer to which is traditional, but I don't know how much of the Christian text will actually come to pass. And I
Sure.
really have serious questions about the validity, but I acknowledge that even though I trash organized Christianity, I will acknowledge that combination of people's reading it, people not recognizing that their own shit stinks and wanting to make other people's lives a living hell,
Sure.
and interpretations kind of make the thing stink.
What's in the New Testament that's not in the Old?
Mainly God, which is 3 and 1, and somehow 3, it's somehow 1.
Yeah, that's not in the New
Testament.
No,
that's in the Old Testament. You can definitely find that throughout. I mean, I could give you specific.
Are you talking
examples,
about when Abraham stands at the door of the tent in the heat of the day, and he says, it's not Yud He Vav He, it's Adoni if you're a Jew, and you can literally just, because the vowels were not written down at the time, and you can say Adonai and then say, okay, those 3 men are the Trinitarian Godhead, or Psalm 110.
I don't know about that part.
where Psalm 110 where it says, and I'm trying to do this from memory, La Adonai. No, it says Yud He Vav He Asher La Adoni if you're a Jew, or Yud He Vav He Asher Adonai if you're a Christian. And then it goes to talk about a king of Israel and a priest who will reign forever, blah, blah, blah. And in fact, Jesus said to the Pharisees in the temple, who is the David talking about when he says, the Lord said to my Lord? If you go to the original Hebrew, the word is Adoni if you believe in the Christian context, or Adonai if you Adoni if you believe in the Jewish context, or Adoni if you believe in the. And then you have Ruach HaKodesh. You have, which I'm aware
of too many Hebrew terms for most everybody.
I'm a little lost.
Say those things in English.
You have.
Are these examples of the Trinity in the Old Testament? Is that where
these are arguments that people
Spirit.
make for the existence of the Trinity in the Old Testament, which I wouldn't quote. They're too weak.
Okay.
I am aware of them. There are arguments made, and ultimately, I'm like, but the real reason why I'm really skeptical of it after feeling chewed up and spit out by Christianity is simply, why would Israel be founded, stay together from like 900 BCE as far as the stories of David. In fact, earlier, if you go all the way back to the Exodus when it was just Ephraim, in fact, the first term for like Jew was actually in the book of Esther, where everyone said Ani Yehudi because they were so afraid. But for that, it was either Ephraim or Yisrael. And why would the people hold together for that long? And then the implications of the New Testament are, okay, guys, now you got to be assimilated into every country on the face of the earth, lose your identity, and you have to adopt their culture. They don't even have to adopt
There's
yours.
way too much conflation of text and sects of Christianity and what they have to say about the text. There's way too much conflation here.
Honestly, I just got sick of the Christianity.
I don't blame you.
I can relate to that.
I got sick of it at a very tender age. Never went back. Can't go back now. Because it doesn't make any sense and it doesn't suit the text. You can't read this stuff this way. Some things are over translated because of tradition. Some things are under translated because of tradition. It's a huge mess.
Yeah, the
Picking
King
up the
James
King
Version is
James,
the shittiest, one of the shittiest.
But none of them are good. There is no good translation because of the presuppositions of Christianity in the translation intrinsically. When they had to change it to English, they insert the word was instead of is. That's a presupposition. You don't know which one it was. There's no way for you to know that. And you can really mess up context real easy doing that. Just simple words.
Here's a fun fact about, I think it's one of they advertise it as the best Hebrew to English translation, but it's supposedly a Christian one. And where it says daughter of Zion, house of Jerusalem, it's supposed to be about the donkey, the king coming riding on a donkey. And they try to put the Yoda speak in there in the English translation, but the Yoda speak actually isn't even in the Hebrew. It's actually the English grammar,
right?
Which makes the Hebrew so hard to understand, because depending upon what it was written, when it was written, will be dependent upon the grammar that you use.
Right.
So to go back 20 minutes ago when you asked a question that nobody ever did address, which seems like something I got to keeping track of with you.
I'm sorry.
You asked me, how would I show? Okay. First of all, I wouldn't use any of those weak arguments. They're too subjective. They're too maybe not references to some kind of Trinity not, maybe in the Old Testament, which is not what I was trying to say at all when I said there's no difference between the Old and New Testaments. And here's also a fine example of the other statement or assertion I made, that their presuppositions were accidentally put into the text, and it makes the person reading the King James, etc., unable to understand what the hell they actually meant. It's just impossible at that point because it's been translated. And now you have to read the presupposition. You got no choice. And the only way to defeat that is go back to the Masoretic text, the Greek lexicon, etc., which is what I do. I don't trust the King James, etc. There's no way you could and be reasonable about it. I love the Yoda speak too, George. That was amazing. I love you're just like trying to be weird on purpose. But anyway, okay. The word father means father, as in the chief father, as in Abba. Okay. And the word master is actually should have come out in the English as the sovereign, not just some slaveholder. And all of the slave laws make perfect sense as a discussion of the population and whether or not they were saved by the father or the sovereign. It makes perfect sense, including the weird exceptions where slaves like get to leave in the 7th year, go back to dad, all this weird stuff that makes no sense for a slave. Makes perfect sense applied to believer, not believer, conversation between the father and the son about who earned what. Now, I think there's absolutely no way around that. Because what the words actually should have meant when they were translated into the English, but they were translated with this presupposition that they're talking about like slaves of the ancient Near East, which doesn't make a damn bit of sense. It's completely immoral.
It was supposed to be more indentured servitude, and depending upon the type of indentured servitude, like someone who needs to eat, blah, 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 who assigns himself to a house.
Look, these are all you're just giving me all the standard apologetics for how people explain this stuff away. It was a local flood. There were locusts in large numbers. There were indentures. Yes, I know. These are using real world actual things we do know about to explain things we don't know about, things that haven't happened.
What particularly is going to happen?
A massive invasion where we're invited into a utopian society, and it'd be up to the individual to first of all accept that, and then second of all describe that they actually understand what is going on, so they're not going into some foreign place under some pretense that's false.
If the massive invasion shows up, we pretty much know what's happening, right?
We pretty much know what? You faded.
What's happening. If the Independence Day aliens come, we pretty much know that it's aliens.
Well, it'd be obvious they were aliens right away, sure.
You're talking about intent of the aliens themselves.
That's a good question, yeah.
Purge the earth of the bad people or those who just want to be miserable and take the good people to paradise. Or at least those who don't want to be shit.
That's a very Christian idea, but it's not a bad start. It's just not all the story. And what Christians don't like to admit is that the Bible talks about resurrection 3 ways. The resurrection, meaning Christ, a singular event in a very small time frame. The first resurrection, which is the main mass of people ascending, and the second resurrection, which is a trickling of lots more of them. Well, you can't maintain standard Christianity within the Bible. There's no way to do that, because you're either a believer or not. You go up, I don't know, a puff of smoke or a light or I don't know, some crazy crap. And then there's nothing after that but punishment. That is not what the text says.
I hope I'm not, driving. I'm having a senior moment as far as names go.
No. I'm still here. I'm
I'm sorry that StreamYard made it a privilege of paying that you get to have people's names under their icon. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I actually get senior moments a lot. That's why a lot of times I will start a sentence and then I will move on to something else without finishing it. I should have been wearing an oven mitt for the past few years. I actually think that I'm probably going to have Parkinson's in a few years.
Oh.
I literally tried to beat myself into a coma to deal with mental depression and all of that.
Oh.
I'm glad you're still around in the condition you are, at least. Okay. I'm personally pleased with that. I'm sorry that you have this dysfunction that you have to put up with.
Mm-hmm.
That sucks. I hope it gives you empathy and understanding for others.
Oh, that was actually the issue. Where I worked, and I had to leave. My therapist said they were doing the same thing to me that governments do when they want to break people. And all the bullshit that bubbled up from the Trump and whatever, I was exposed to that about 10 years ago with my coworkers at a defense contractor. Most of them were miserable, hateful putzes who were looking to Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump all the way back to 2013. And the argument between altruism or egoism was incredibly intense with this lot. And they wouldn't just let me do my work. They were trying to convince me that I was a socialist, a national socialist, a liberal Nazi. And then they would tell me how Hitler could do a better job than President Obama and subject me to anti Semitism. So I've just been worried throughout the past more than a decade as well. You saw me quoting Rand and got here with the egoism and Nietzsche and all of that. So it's that and just the fear that we're going to become a fucking dictatorship with the Mango Mussolini at the helm.
I think that's just obvious cruelty and manipulation.
There is something obviously broken in humanity. There's something incomplete and broken about humanity in general, and it can get to you. But you know, there's roses among the thorns, and it's important. It's important to enjoy those. That's my advice about that. I've had a similar struggle in terms of like being surrounded by unpleasant behaving people, and a little bit of perspective about, you know, the possibility of what we can be can go a long way in terms of being, you know, exercising empathy.
It's that empathy.
Yeah, no, I know.
Gives us our humanity.
That's right. That's right.
Let's look at this.
I completely agree. I also really encourage well-regulated militia to jump in if you can, because
I want to compliment, not to really interrupt, but I want to compliment well-regulated militia because you're doing a fine job of imitating Christ. You're poking and then running, and then coming back and poking and then running. So by your conception of Christ, good job following.
You know, I actually hope that this year turns out better than it started. I was actually thinking about Purim, the holiday of reversals and stuff. The year starts out with absolutely no chance in hell of Ukraine either surviving or the Democrats holding on to either house. Mm-hmm. And let's just look at egoism versus altruism, shall we? If all the Western nations just did what was in their own short-term self-interest, just let the Ukrainians be rolled over by Russia. Don't give them any support, and your gas prices will be relatively reasonable. And it's just one of those things where it looks like the wrong thing to do in the short term, but, you know, things just snowball into something beautiful probably in a few weeks, if not the week. The Ukrainians will have Kherson back. But if everyone in Ukraine just wanted to be a Quisling, that was the name of the guy who handed Norway over to the Nazis, and when you say the word Quisling, it just sounds low and like a miserable sack of shit.
I'm
And
definitely
so
gonna remember that.
we're gonna use the word quisling. If all the quislings just betrayed the Ukrainian military and no one stood up and fought and oh we're gonna die, then they would have never realized their true strength altogether. And it's like in the
Right.
Ukrainian national anthem, and we will lay down our lives for our freedom. It starts out, and I know I'm not going to give a word for, a good translation, but it starts out, um, the longing for freedom and the glory has not faded. Come on, brothers, fate has smiled upon us.
Hmm.
The enemy will vanish like the dew in the rays of sunshine. We shall reign in the land that we love, and we shall lay down our lives for our freedom, and we shall prove that we are worthy. We are the. I'm just going to do a more inclusive, not necessarily, because Ukraine has a lot of people in it. So I'm going to just use the term worthy of a generation worthy of our heritage. It's one of the most beautiful songs. I'd say Hatikva and the Ukrainian national anthem are my two favorite national anthems
That really
because
is
they're so
beautiful.
easy to understand.
Do you think
Le-
do you think you have a strong enough grasp on Richard's worldview to plug that anthem into what he's saying? Because it sure resonated to me. It sounded just like what he's saying, which is interesting. That idea pops up in art and music and outside of what's typically considered sacred scripture all the time too. This idea of longing for freedom for your people and being
oh,
worthy of it
that
and laying down your
concept,
life to
yes.
deserve it. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that concept. One of the reasons also why I got in such big trouble at the place where I worked is I had the piss and vinegar where I could literally stand up and I would argue with Nazis.
Mm.
Most people would just stay quiet, but I would say, like, right, you weren't Christians from birth, and Jesus was a Jew, not an Aryan, and you need to accept him as your Lord and Savior and realize that he is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the King of Israel. He is
Yeah.
Adonai Sivaot. And they absolutely hated it. And
I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was reminding them of the root of their religion, and and there's like, and then in I forget what month, but I was at Charlottesville trying to commit suicide by Trump supporter, trying to agitate the Nazis to kill me, because to tell you the truth,
Wow.
if you're doing something like that, at least your life might amount to something, and you didn't die on your knees, you died on your feet.
Hmm.
And as far as the Ukrainians go, it was called the Revolution of Dignity. And, I would actually rather die than live in a country ruled by fucking Nazis. So
You're
if the
Clint Eastwood
Nazis,
for real. You know that? That's the movie. What is it called? Tornado.
Oh yeah.
Only you really went and like tried to get him to do it, like for real. It's not just a story.
yeah, and the guys with the balaclavas and the little red and black flags actually dragged me away, wouldn't let me live near because they knew I had a death wish.
Wow.
Incredibly depressed.
But it's still pretty intense, and at least you wanted to have a useful life, and good for you for that much. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. If you don't mind too much, I'd like to drag this back to religious stories.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So if what it is animism, describing a future intent, and not to avoid, but to directly address, even though somewhat sarcastic, and I'm not even sure how serious they are,
It's hard to tell.
well-regulated militia, which, as far as I know, George, and George probably knows this, regulated was a term meaning something like your supply chain of expendables and non-expendable materials. So to say well-regulated means to be well supplied in a reasonable manner that will suit the job. Something like that. Aliens is not a presupposition. I know of no one who could honestly like read these stories, and if I ask them, are there angels, they have to say yes. I say, did angels ever like reside here in their total population as a home? Say no. Can angels act on reality? Yes. And they can affect physical things. Do they arrive here in mass? Is what they're describing that they will eventually do. Yes, that's an alien invasion. There's no presuppositions in that. It's necessary. It's a living thing able to act on reality no matter what kind of life it has, and that's irrelevant. Doesn't live here but comes here en masse. It's not a presupposition. You can't get around the fact that every religion around this planet is describing an alien invasion.
It reminds me of something. One of the translations of Shalom Aleichem, come in peace, ministering angels. Where's this come in peace? I'm not going to bother with
Yes,
the Hebrew because no one would understand it.
true too.
But
I might
if
catch
you want to
30,
learn,
15% of it, but
if you want to learn it, it actually repeats itself so well. It's one of the first songs everyone learns relatively quickly.
you're welcome to sing it once in its entirety.
Shalom Aleichem, Malakei Asharet, Malakei Malakei Malakim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hu, Shalom, Malakei Shalom, Malakei Mihi Melech, Malakei HaMalakim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And actually, I forget the third part. But
That's okay. It sounded pretty hopeful, upbeat. And by hopeful, I mean hopeful for the future.
it's
Is
like
how it sounded to me.
it is. It's actually like every the start of Kabbalat Shabbat. It's basically like come in peace, ministering angels, angels of the Most High. I'm just
By the
happy
way,
to
that
see
was the
him.
first time in my life I had some inkling what the opera was about.
I
That was
don't
weird.
have a Siddur right here to actually look up the English translation.
Okay.
And back to your
So if
interpretation.
yeah, so well, I think I first of all, I don't think it's my interpretation. It was shown to me in a movie sequence in my head that I would have never guessed could have happened. The movie sequence described looking at it in a different way that I don't know of anyone who's ever looked at it that way. The more I investigate that interpretation of it, the more it holds to reality and the more flawless it becomes. When I invite people with double and quadruple doctorates, well, not quadruple doctorates, but double doctorates and multiple masters to come and critique it, they can't find something that is logically impossible in it. And frankly, I'm not that smart. So I'm convinced it's not my interpretation at all, but I will continue to use it as long as it continues to work. But within that interpretation is the idea that we are temporarily stuck here, and when we get to the point when we're about to leave, and also simultaneously about to kill ourselves off, and simultaneously that the earth is going to kill us off because of very natural occurrences. Everything being natural, that is to say, if I've been invented an AI, then it's in my nature to create an AI, which means the AI is naturally occurring. And there's just no way around it being natural. That when we get to that point of technology, they have to come pull our butt out of the fire because they know what we are, they know what we're going to do, and it's extremely predictable, probably to them, third, fourth time around, mundane. So predictable. That they're not in any way surprised. And some artists have gleaned that from the text, and having the angel swinging a mighty sword chopping off someone's head, and the angel's just like, la-di-da, done another day at the parks, chopping off a head. Because it's that repeated to them. And they're just doing what they know they have to do. And it's not even interesting, really, except for the celebration of our ascension. And that is highly celebrated. But that it's all set up to be this giant countdown timer, which is why the genetic groups, haplogroups, ethnic groups, etc., is to create this countdown timer of technology. And when we get to a certain point, they have to save our butts. So they spread us out pretty good to start with, so we can have as long as possible here, which ain't very darn long, something about 30,000 years in this form, and some estimates are as high as 50,000, but whatever. From the Gregorian point forward, and what seems before that, not very perfectly human, not actually, not very bright. Certainly couldn't take over anything. Probably couldn't organize a good chess match. And they come and they rescue us. But as soon as we are rescued, we just experienced end times. So as soon as we get to the point where we, had a nice shower, had a good meal, had a good sleep, the ones who were the main players in end times are asked to write down what they just experienced. Now they're going to write that in several, that's going to get translated into every human language in existence. And it's going to get told to the next tribe like that in a way that tribe needs it on the next earth. Which is why the works are perfect, because they're just literally telling what just happened in their end times, the end of their planet, which was conducted by angels and conducted perfectly. And they haven't even had time to forget the details. Now, some detail they're leaving out on purpose, like in many other miracles we're not mentioning here. Like, wow, what's included in that? Well, actually, it would spoil the whole thing if we told you. Because then you'd understand that Jesus doesn't happen in the ancient Near East. The Jews are right. He didn't get crucified and died and resurrected there with almost no one noticing. That's not what happened. But the ascension is directly after the final ascensions, are the 40 days following the resurrection, which just hasn't happened. Which it's simply a technological claim of a very, very ancient set of humans that they understand the human body so well, they can take you stinky and rotten and fix it. And that is an example of why you should trust them. They're not here to eat you. An animal that wanted to eat you wouldn't care about how to do that.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
You referenced miracles that you haven't seen. Somehow that in my mind brought me back to this, because you mentioned a countdown. Jesus said, watch the fig tree when the leaves are tender. You know that summer is near, for truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place.
Amen.
What do you think that has to do with the state of Israel? And
Almost nothing.
almost nothing.
I think what he's actually talking about is signs, right? And he says it more than once. You say red skies at night, sailors delight. Red skies in the morning, sailors take warning. But you don't know the signs that matter. You're neglectful. You're way off topic here, and none of that crap matters. What does matter is the signs for an evil nation, the signs of end times, the approach of the Father in heaven, and those are the signs that matter. And when you see those signs, be producing fruit. Don't be lackadaisical anymore. Get to work. But of course, he's speaking to the intended reader, who is the one who fulfills the story, which is the hero. He's not talking to everyone, obviously.
About this evil nation, do you happen to think it's any particular nation?
Oh, well, I'm quoting the King James when I said it that way because it's the most familiar way to say it so that people get the reference. Now, that's not what the most original ideas were. Evil doesn't mean evil there, and nation means goy. And it only means don't be a doubter when you've had all the experience, but instead get to work. And that the signs for an evil nation only mean that these things correct people's minds, flipping the fairy tales into reality for them so that they can really understand and accept heaven, where in the past it's only been a series of fairy tales. So memorize and recognize the signs so that when you see them happen, you'll recognize that they are those signs and that your religion did describe them, no matter what religion you have. It did describe them, and you can understand that this is end times, and that will make you fruitful. And directly to the intended reader, it's time for you to get to work when you see all that.
What is particularly this work? Because if I was going to
time
read
of his testimony.
No, but I mean, tell people about the angels coming back, or and I'm just trying to wrap my head around what you're saying.
I think everything I'm saying and a heck of a lot more.
It's it's a very big picture he's trying to paint, Commander. Kind of have to look at the edges of it first.
Because when I think evil nation, I think of Karen gumming and BSing everyone or cramming his jackfruit down everyone's throat. And Karen is the actual word Daniel used to describe the little corn, the Antichrist figure in the book of Daniel. It's actually Karen rather than Karen, but it's so damn close. It's where we get carotene from. The substance horns are made out of. And in Daniel chapter 3, verse 5, the feminine version of the word, because Karen is the masculine version of the word. The feminine version of the word is karna, which sounds a lot like corona. And if you know from like Hebrew to English, the few words which are direct derivatives from Hebrew to English, like behemoth or behemoth, it's not a one-to-one, but it's damn close. And I just thought that was funny, that the leader of this evil nation might as well be a Karen.
I never heard that.
That's proof that the Bible does have some predictive capability.
Quite possibly. It might be a bit of a stretch, though.
I got to say goodbye, you two, but thank you for the time.
Thoughts. Wrap it up, Mac.
All right. Well, I think we can jump back maybe. I think it's only about 5 minutes ago when you painted the picture of what conditions would exist at the time of this arrival of angels, and it wasn't said explicitly, but I think we should point out that that's happening. That's what our Earth is on the brink of environmental collapse. We've been playing odds with all kinds of imminent disasters that we've been avoiding them somehow up until now, and they're due. So we're there, and I mean, as Commander seems very aware of, humanity itself is in really rough shape. The political structures and economic structures, food supply chains, things like that are, and not to fearmonger, but things like that are really, really on the brink, really in a problematic state. And oppression, like we're seeing in countries like Ukraine and Bangladesh and Ethiopia, they're becoming so common that they're not even really reported thoroughly. I mean, maybe you could say this has always been like this, but it really hasn't, because we've never had this many monkeys on this mud ball before. So that that makes a big difference. So anyway, this is we definitely need salvation in a literal sense. So and if we are promised that, and if that happens, that's something we should open our hearts to, I think. So here's my
Thanks
final.
for coming by, Mac.
Yeah, it's always
Sorry, I stupidly scheduled the stream for 2 hours late.
That's really fine. No problem. I was actually out in the woods all morning doing some mushroom foraging, so I forgot it was Wednesday too, so it lined up perfectly.
Oh,
except
it worked out great.
Yeah, it was perfect. So, and I got a nice basket of oyster mushrooms for dinner tonight, so it's going to be a nice meal. Yeah, I'm going to put them on the grill. Anyway, thanks, guys. I love you, and really great to meet you, Commander.
Great to meet you too. And you're right about the environment and all of that. The warming that they're expecting, worst case scenario, definitely take out, what was it, a third or 2/3 of the vegetation, right?
It's going to be bad. It's going to get bad suddenly. Yeah. So. Agreed. Yeah. So, dig in. Make your peace with God, as they say.
I'm advising everyone to put all their money into canned food and shotguns. Remember the intelligent gremlin from Gremlins 2?
No.
Yeah,
but I like that advice.
I think it was Stripe. They called it Stripe, or it had the...
No, Stripe was just the toughest one. The intelligent one.
There was one that
we have to let Mac go, because I'm sure Mac meant it when he said I have to go, and he always waits as long as he can.
Right.
Thanks. Peace.
Peace and respect, Randolph Richardson. I'm gonna wrap this up, but I'm gonna let you do it, okay, Commander 401. Go ahead and try to, I don't know, summate everything you just said, please.
I actually am so tired. I don't think I can.
Okay, so people review the video to get the summation of everything that, because you covered a lot, and I really appreciate that about you, but I wouldn't even know how to summarize it. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate it, and on no notice, and thank you for your extreme efforts in understanding others. It's deeply appreciated. At least here it is.
I will watch and see what you have to say, and hopefully talk to you again.
I hope so. I don't kick people, so see yourself out by hitting the red dot with the white X. Thank you very much,
All
Commander
right.
401.
I didn't do anything wrong, right?
No. You're so polite. You're so nice. No. That's why I won't kick you. You have to kick yourself.
Everyone, bye.
And to all of you in side chat, thanks for dropping by. I remember some names: Harple Blues, obviously Randolph Richardson, who just got here, and we're shutting it down. So perfect timing. You don't have to actually listen. And you attended. That was amazing. It's Skinny. What was that religious? Uncle Beck. And there was Well-Regulated Militia. Well-Regulated, if you're still watching, come have a conversation. I'm not going to try to beat you up, but I am going to put your feet to the fire a little bit and say, are you making sense? Spooky bed hair. I think that about covers it. Till next time, guys, peace and respect to you all. Thank you so much. And I want you to know that I truly look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Peace.